Patrick Lawrence once again, as I will, and my guest, Peter Kauffman. We both regret very much having lost contact uh, with ourselves and with you at the end of, toward the end of our exchange. We had what is all too common up here in rural Connecticut, a power outage. So we'll finish up now and welcome back once again, Peter. Peter is the author of a really excellent book. I can't recommend it more highly. Very thought-provoking, concerning the fight for free knowledge, such as the subtitle. Um, and I don't know how it could possibly be more pertinent than the circumstances we have before us. Here's the book. I put it before you because I recommend it very highly. Seven Stories Press in New York did it. Out now, as they say. Peter, I think we were talking about censorship, and I had an idea that you published somewhat before what is turning into, to my mind, and the minds of numerous others, a really alarming creep of censorship into our onto our village green, let's say. I wonder if you have thoughts now that perhaps didn't make the book. Are you as alarmed as I am about this?
Thanks. It's good to be back and with power. I love the question of censorship, and the first two chapters of this book are about state and church multinational control over what you could say freely, and how you could say it, the access to the means of reproduction, I guess, to merge a couple of old philosophical concepts. And the third chapter is really all about the Soviet totalitarian example, the model of thought control that existed in the East Bloc that the Soviets really did a nice job with, perfecting, but which, exists in a number of other places even now. I think where we are is, today is a long distance from where those systems might have put us if we had been living during those times. If you're referring to, as when we left off, some of the statements that are coming out of today's White House about social media platforms, then I would urge us to take a more careful look at what is and is not the village green, because to me, the village green is really like the old village green, which was a commons, right? Like where you could graze your sheep or go for a walk or whatever freely. It belonged to everyone. It's a tiny space compared to what it should be. The real village green, the real kind of information commons, the platforms that are controlled by, us, are very, count them on one hand, really. Wikipedia is the chief one among them. I don't know that Facebook is part of our village green, so I might, I don't know.
Peter,
Probably the largest argument we'd ever have would be over the number of oysters we might consume rather than this.
Peter, look, You know, in the 50s, when we had the censorship problems, it did not hold to say, well, these are private companies, they can do what they like. I don't, to understand journalism in its broadest terms, all dimensions of it. If you're running a newspaper or a broadcaster, you're running a business by our model, absolutely. You're making money or attempting to, but you assume certain civic responsibilities when you operate that business. It's more than a business. You're not selling tires or life insurance. You have civic responsibilities. You are in public space. And for these companies to behave as they are, it's censorship by any other name. Look, we've got the following. Um, there's no disputing this. They're calling these young CEOs who don't particularly strike me as particularly qualified to swim in this water before Congress repeatedly under pressure, censor and censor more. And it's not enough, censor more. Again and again and again, more and more explicitly. And the unspoken reality here is they're under a lot of, they're being coerced. The, the deal is, if you don't do this, we are going to break you up under antitrust provisions. And that has become more and more explicit. So look, I don't care for overblown comparisons by way of we're just like Pravda, okay? We're just like the Soviet Union. Let's stay away from hyperbole. But our tilt, I will say this, and I don't think it is hyperbole, is in that direction.
Well,
I
it's,
don't subscribe. It
yeah.
can't happen here.
Yeah.
Is not on my list of realities, right?
Same with me, by the way. On a whole lot of regarding a whole lot of things. But I'd agree with you that depending on the media and depending on the business model and depending on the specific reliance on, for example, airwaves as opposed to paper, there are certain responsibilities that you might have as a media company. And I think there's a balance of civic responsibilities. So, if Mark Zuckerberg is brought before Congress and told you have to stop publishing swastikas on your website, for example, if he were to be, on Facebook, or you have to pull telling the Twitter CEOs, you have to pull the Goebbels quotations from your. I think we'd all agree that that too falls under their civic responsibility in social media.
I'm a First Amendment purist. The slippery slope is never very far.
So what does that mean? That they should be allowed to publish Hitlerian propaganda on Facebook?
It's an extreme. We're not, first of all, we're kind of jumping the banks here. We're not talking about that. We're talking about taking down information that is judged to be disputatious, right? Or harmful to public safety, or spreads discord and so on and so forth, right? But on the Hitler question, I think the First Amendment should hold. Publish it. People are otherwise are are we presuming? Look, if you saw it, I think you'd be able to handle it pretty well, Peter Kauffman, and I would too. Are we presuming that most people couldn't handle that?
I don't know that they're I mean, let's put it a different way. Let me flip the question over, which is your question anyway, and flip, are there any limits to what can and cannot be published? I mean, if there calls, for pedophiles to, to use a page out of the hymnal of some of the QAnon thing, to assemble and arm themselves, and roll down the street in SUVs and pick up children, should that be? I think that there is. I think that there are limits to what.
Yeah,
And
I don't
no, but
deny
just
there.
to finish the point,
Yes.
I think that given where these people were stuck in today's White House, I'm not necessarily defending them. I'm seeking to understand their motives more than anything. What they inherited from the Trump White House in terms of just continuous, socially harmful, officially sponsored disinformation and lies. Perhaps they're going too far the other way, but I think we can maybe understand.
All right, we'll find our way out of these trees in a moment. Look, you're mixing moral questions, pedophilia and so forth, with political questions, all right? The minute you use the word dis or misinformation, you are introducing a judge. You are nominating somebody to adjudicate or determine what is mis and disinformation. That's different from pedophiles and so on and so forth, right? And when you do that, you're in trouble. And that's why we're in trouble now. Nobody is ever asking the obvious question in the room. It's the gorilla on the sofa. Who is determining this mis and disinformation? Example. I just read a piece this afternoon, and this is one of countless. It just happens to be ready to hand, about social media accounts run by responsible epidemiologists and other medical scientists, qualified people, discussing the efficacy of ivermectin. Okay, their social media accounts have been canceled. Right now, I don't know whether they have or not. It's something I read, but I've read it an awful lot. That we know the sensitivity there. Ivermectin is another vitamin C. The only problem with ivermectin is nobody makes any money on it, right? Is it efficacious? Well, it might be a debate. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But to cancel it out, we have a problem there, right? And there's more political stuff. There's sort of sharper edged political matters, that are being canceled out here, right?
I mean, I think, in our discussion, there's an effort on your part to circumscribe what examples I might be able to introduce in a
well, I don't
discussion.
deny there are complications.
No.
here.
I mean, I
There's-
just want to
give you
finish
that.
my statement. In a discussion about censorship, what I'm trying to do is understand, even for the First Amendment purist, what set of parameters might exist for you to believe that information might be harmful and should be forbidden from being put out in the public eye. That's a great discussion, and I would love to spend many hours in that debate.
Yeah.
But we do know what harmful information can be, whether we're calling it dis. There's now a new term, malinformation, which
Is there
may be
really?
more satisfactory.
You mean
But
malignly advanced information? Or,
yeah, exactly that. Like, yeah.
anyway, look, we're getting a touch far afield from your book, but I wanted to ask you because this is creeping up on us rather swiftly, actually, and
Mm.
I might be moved from my position, but right now, to put it simply, I stand with those attorneys who defended the Nazis marching through Skokie, Illinois, a long time ago. Right,
Mhm.
that's where I am on it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I understand that too. The rights of assembly are one thing, but um, you know, calls to action are another.
Yeah. All right. Look, something came up in our earlier exchange, and that is the connection between the the fight for free knowledge, as you put it so
Yeah.
nicely, um, and the kind of system this will require. We're kind of tipping into how you look, what you see going forward, right?
Hmm.
And as I read the book, I thought, I think Peter seems to be implying, um, perhaps without even knowingly, that some form of social democracy is going to be required to get done the things that he thinks need to get done, right? Is that right?
Probably. Yeah, I mean, short of that, some, giant transformation of the current systems that we have, at least in
Yeah.
this
The
country.
the broader systems.
Yeah, I mean, how we approach, in particular, the production of knowledge. Like, to me, that's such a huge thing. Sorry, the phone is going off. But we have uh, you know, arsenals, in essence, that are publishing knowledge in ways that are um, restricted just from the very get-go, by current practices of um, copyright, and licensing and other things, where we should really give that a rethink. And
Yeah.
that's sort of the third of my book is all about that.
Yeah, I want to talk about that now. What I meant was not to put the charge of social democracy into it. What I meant was, do we need an enlarged, um, let's say, revived public sector, right? Public
Yes.
space, properly defended public space, right?
Yeah, I mean, some uh, in some um, unadorned way, Jürgen Habermas and some of what he writes about are, at the core of this final part of the book. Exactly that, creating a public space, a zocalo
Hmm.
for discourse today that is run neither by the Biden administration, Zuckerberg, or his shareholders. And how to figure out how to enlarge that space, I think, is the job we have in front of us.
Yeah. As you've rotated the gaze forward, having done such a fascinating job on the history, um, you have our commons, our network, our archive, our moment. Can you talk briefly about these and what you see when you face out front?
Yeah, I mean, and thanks, compliments, are few and far between these days. So
Come, Peter,
all,
come.
all of them. But yeah, I can say a couple things. One is, we have this concept of things falling into the public domain, ultimately, when their licenses are squoze to the max, or when their contracts are up and stuff. And that is like conceived of, and in fact, it was conceived of in the 1700s. By the way, the Enlightenment, when these copyright laws were first introduced, that was conceived of as like the sort of state of nature, the resting place of an idea, no matter how useful commercially it might have been, or an intellectual product in the
Mhm.
public domain, that things fall there as naturally as apples fall from a tree, which Newton figured out also during that exact same period in the 1700s. So in calling for like a new enlightenment, look at that again, maybe, and see if that that place, the public domain, needs to be somehow like enlarged, as we just spoke about, but maybe also the process of reaching it needs to be somehow accelerated, maybe with shortened copyright terms, maybe with abridged restrictions around what can be circulated, recirculated, used,
Mm.
reused, remixed, all of that. I think that'll make for a more vibrant and healthier information environment.
No issue.
Certainly,
Great
if
idea.
facts,
Yeah,
right? If
yeah.
facts are put out there at the
Uh,
center.
uh, Are these things, there's a how question, okay? My background is newspapers, so I tend to be rather close to the ground, so how
Yeah,
does that work, right?
yeah.
Uh, what is the how of, what's in the air now? Are people talking about these things, or has the plane not yet landed, or what?
Well, I think uh, it's a good question. You'll probably ask me 3 follow-ups, and if my power goes off, I'm just pretending I'll have run from you, like,
Right, pull the plug,
because
done,
yeah,
okay.
exactly. I'll claim to have lightning hit, but yeah, exactly. But I mean, ironically, part of like what the Psaki statements are about, and the Fauci's anger today, yesterday, whenever that
Yeah,
was, like,
yeah, yeah.
all this stuff is because lies have been put forward, um, and the question, so during whatever this has been, truth decay, information disorder, whatever, like the Trump patch epitomized for us, that we're just uh, you know beginning to understand now. How do we get out of that? And I think part of the way is by insisting that we publish as much as possible, as freely as possible. Um, and by we, I mean, frankly, knowledge institutions and people, who can write and think deeply like you, like to get these things out there in ways that are, someone wrote recently, like, the truth is paywalled, but the lies are free. That system has been set up in such a way that it's harder to access factual information, perhaps, and that may
Mm.
be just a nice fortune cookie, reduction of the whole thing. But than it is to access false information.
Mm. But people are talking, people are on your page by way of these, a rethink of the public domain.
I think COVID has helped in terms of people understanding. It's helped in one sense, in terms of people like understanding in practical terms the benefit of sharing
Yeah, yeah,
information, data, articles that may have been 5 years ago published with all kinds of hypertrophied restrictions. Now those were removed in part to enable science to get to places faster,
yeah.
um, and that was good. So those people and people around, but not enough of those people are on the same page. So frankly, that's the next book.
Oh,
It's
good.
about
Go
it's
for it,
about what,
Peter.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's about what that
Well,
means.
I can't thank you enough. First of all, for joining me and those watching, but also especially because of the inconvenience of our power outage and our our obligation to return to the scene a little bit here this afternoon. Thank you, Peter. Do you have anything more to add? I have something I'd like to put before those joining us, if you wouldn't mind. Maybe you'll have a comment on
No, please.
it. And it's this: these two words, misinformation and disinformation. They're good words, but I think we need to understand what happens the moment we use those words. The moment we use those words, we are introducing judgments. And the question that is rather stubbornly unposed is, if we're going to use those words, who is it we propose is making those judgments, right? I always love this little pun. I read it in the Village Voice sort of 40 years ago, right? One man's meat is another man's poisson, right? Okay, your disinformation is my truth, right? So I want to leave that question out there. When we use these words, they deserve considerably more thought than they seem to have gotten these past months as we fling them around rather freely. Any comment on that, Peter? So we,
I mean, it's a boy. How many more hours do we have? But
10 or 15,
yeah.
don't worry about it.
Let's try.
We'll stop for dinner.
Do an ongoing series, but I would say, I guess it matters like the subject, of what we're, those words in what context. Like, if all of a sudden everyone starts publishing information that says, to use another trope, like seatbelts don't matter, helmets don't matter if you're riding on is that, what is that? I mean, I think all kinds of communication in society involves all kinds of judgment. And so invariably, I don't know if judgment is introduced so much as it's all, in the DNA of what happens when a statement is made from one person to another. Like, judgment comes into play. And maybe we parse judgment, maybe we parse information, misinformation, maybe we study the context. I think it's a great conversation to have.
Yeah, here's another one worth a few hours, and
Yep.
we'll shut down the shop here, Peter. I promise. Good old Wendell Berry wrote an essay years ago. I remember reading. I know where I was living at the time, so it was going to be the mid-90s. Saying, part of our problem is we are asking law to determine matters traditionally left to morality. Because our public morality has collapsed. We are assigning to law matters that law is not equipped to manage. They are matters of shared morality, the things that, one of the things that binds a polity together, and I think maybe the disinformation, misinformation question, that observation, it's never left me. It's a good one, right? May inform this question of mis and disinformation, right? So until next time, Peter Kauffman, thank you very much for joining me and all those who have stayed with us.
My pleasure, and thanks for letting Wendell Berry have the last word. I think that's probably the best decision either one of us could make.
Come, Peter. I look forward to watching the progress of the book, and I'm pretty confident it's going to make some impressive progress. So
Thanks.
Until soon, my friend. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Bye.
bye.